All right. Here at Nothing Near Post, we're excited to have, as our inaugural guest, I might add, an Oyster Bay, New York native, a Long Island County champion in both lacrosse and football, an all-county basketball player, a New York State lacrosse state champion, a USILA All-American defender, a two-time Final Four participant, a one-time national championship participant, a two-time MAC regular season champion, a one-time MAC tournament champion, a man down guru, a guy who is top two in the country in high fives every season, and most of all, an all-around great guy, John Odierna. Welcome to the Nothing Near Post show.
Wow, what an intro. To be the first guest ever and get an intro like that, I might be a recurring guest.
We might need that, man. We might need that. Definitely dug into the Long Island, the background down there, the Cold Spring Harbor. You know, had to check it out. But three-sport athlete, that's incredible. Talk a little bit about any high school memories still from those championships.
If I remember correctly, what was cool was the beauty of public school, and Cold Spring Harbor is probably the most private of public schools, but it was cool growing up with your group of guys, and we talked about being the team that would win state for the first time since we were in like fifth grade. So coming all the way up, and my junior year, we won the Long Island Championship in football, this is classic Long Island. They don't compete in the state championship. They view the Long Island Championship as the finish line for football. So we won the last game of the year in football, and then we won the state in the spring. So my understanding was us and Huntington, we both did it that year. It was the first time that any Long Island team had won both the football Long Island Championship and the state championship. So it was cool to be a part of that. And, listen, I was the D3 representative on the team. A lot of guys that were significantly better players than me were playing. So just to be a role player and be part of it, those are cool memories.
We all got to roll, and we'll dive into that. That Huntington, though, was that the Bratton brother era?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the Brat that year. The first midfield line for them was the two, Ramel and Chamel with Scott Kosas, who went to Georgetown and was like an absolute stud. And the attack was Zach Howell, if you remember, from Duke. And they actually had a crease guy, Austin Carino, who went to play at he played Division II, either at New York Tech or LIU post when they were still D2, and he scored 120 goals a year in high school. He was the most perfect off-ball guy. All those guys would draw the attention, and it'd be the Audie Carino dunk fest off-ball.
Man, I love off-ball assisted goals. I mean, as an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, they make you pull your hair out.
Oh yeah.
Turning our attention to the Sunday game that we just came out of. How we feeling coming out of Sunday after the Cuse 13-10 win over Hop?
Feeling good. I mean, it's obviously super hard to win at the level against anybody. Everybody's got scholarships and full-time coaches, and the landscape has changed. There's a lot of schools really committed to lacrosse. So to win any game feels great, let alone the rivalry, greatest rivalry in lacrosse, oldest rivalry, and two historic programs. Feels good. And, what I do every day, every morning after a game day, so this was yesterday, I sent out Jay-Z's on to the next one in the group chat. You enjoy it for a few hours, but then once the clock strikes AM the next day, that game is behind us, and how do we go 1-0 in the next game is our focus.
Totally. Before we move on, can we look back a little bit and talk about the preparation, your defensive unit against their offensive unit? Obviously, they've got a great unit. You guys got a great unit, maybe a little something to prove. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset going into the game for your crew?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have so much respect for them. I think offensively, if you look at every metric, they were top 10 offense or top 12 offense going into the game. So we felt like it was going to be a huge test for us. And I think we've played obviously better this year than we did last year, but we felt like we've left some plays out there, especially in games against the ranked opponents. So we talked about going into this game, trying to plant our flag a little bit on our end of the field and show up and be a big reason why, Syracuse is up by 1 at the end, no matter what it takes. So, I think the offense gets a lot of the hype, and they deservedly so. I mean, they're definitely one of the best shows in the country. But we also want to do our part and make sure we're not just relying on those guys to win 15-14 when we play a ranked team. And with an offense as good as Hopkins, we discussed, it's got to be our 7 versus their 6. They're such a good team offense. Going into the game, 68% of their goals were assisted. And just talking about, in a way, it was like looking in the mirror, like playing against our offense at practice with how well they share the ball, skip the ball, find the open spots. They don't need to beat you. And those are some of the best offenses, toughest to play against. So a lot of it was that messaging was like our 7 need to be better than their 6 consistently. And it's not about 1-on-1s and 2-on-2s. It's about the whole everything versus their whole unit as well. So I thought our guys, we were great for most of the game. And then there were little spots where we let up a couple, I think in the first quarter, they scored on 4 straight possessions, one of them being a man up. In the fourth, they scored back-to-back possessions. In the third, they scored back-to-back possessions. So, I would say for like rough math here, like 45 of 60 minutes, we played really, really well. And then for 15 minutes, a little bit of room for improvement.
Of course. Yeah, I think you talking about their offense is interesting. I heard you on Q Sports Talk Radio talking about how Syracuse's offense could be compared to Hopkins in the sense that it's family style. Everybody eats, right? And I love that. And I think offensively it can make people better. And like you said, it gives defenses headaches. You can't just key in on one thing. But speaking of that preparation, I'm going to come out and ask you, like, where was Charlie Eiler on the scout? Was that something that you guys expected, or was that a surprise and kind of tipped the cap to that kid? Because he certainly carried them on the score sheet.
Yeah, he's a hell of a player. I mean, to be honest with you, he came in the first quarter against Virginia last week when Russell Melendez got hurt, and he was great. He had 3 points in 3 quarters in his first true college lacrosse action, and one of his first touches, he took Virginia's number 1 defenseman to the goal, turned the corner, and scored. So, like, for us, I said to our guys, like, whether it's 31 Melendez or 29 Eiler, to me, it's the same. Like, you treat them like they're the same guy. They're both very two-handed. They share the ball really well. And even I had said to the guys, I would expect Eiler to start either way. Even if Melendez is healthy, we were expecting him to start. And I listened to Coach Milliman. He has his podcast, and he discussed that they had been looking at him as a midfielder before Melendez got hurt. So he was a guy that Eiler, we were very prepared for. We expected him to definitely play. And to his credit, I mean, if I have it correctly, I think he went 3-1. So, I think he's a guy that is probably doing a great job of dominating the opportunities he's getting. And, through 2 games, he has 7 points versus Virginia and Syracuse. So I would expect to see him playing a lot more moving forward, regardless of who's in or who's out for them.
Yeah, I know Coach Zissy and the West Coast Stars are fired up to see Eiler doing his thing. So pretty cool to see a guy get an opportunity and strike while the iron's hot. But you guys certainly did enough to keep him down for sure. And I guess going back to preparing for that family style offense, can you tell us a little bit about maybe a scheme or an idea that you guys had to prepare for the most going into Sunday?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they play pretty true to their identity. Sometimes, when I watch film, I watch sort of situational lacrosse and try to find, high stress moments, when you're watching teams in scout spots. So, like, for example, as a group, we watched just their fourth quarter of them versus UNC, and watch the flow of every possession. What are they running? What do they get to when they're trailing by a goal or 2 in the fourth quarter and they need something? What do they think are their go-to things? And who are their go-to guys in their minds? So, that was something that we actually pointed to in the fourth quarter on Sunday. It was like, well, we prepared for this moment where we were in a tight game, either tied or up by 1. We know what they're going to go to here. We've seen it. And I think where they do such a good job is they're committed to their identity. I think that's what makes them play with such confidence. They're not doing 100 wrinkles and being okay at a bunch of things. They're great at, like, the 3 things they do. So I just think we talked about, our game plan was understand what they're going to do, have confidence with the familiarity of what you might see. But then when the stress and the pressure comes, you just have to execute at a level that is better than they do.
Totally. Yeah, there's no reason if you got 1,000 tools, you don't know how to use them. What
Exactly.
good are they? turn our attention to your guys. They played hard top to bottom. I was in the dome on Sunday. Electric energy was awesome. Um, Everyone will point to Billy Dwan and his play, both defensively off the carpet and in transition, because that's the sexy stuff, right? I'm curious if any of the non-starters, or even maybe some of those guys that don't get talked about enough,
Mm-hmm.
stood out to you on Sunday. Because personally, I felt like depth was a huge part of the game for your unit, especially with Michael Grace going down there in the second half, and
Mm-hmm.
the stable of D middies that you seem to continually just roll through game after game. So wanted to I'm curious if any of those guys that aren't making the headlines kind of stood out to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the guy, this is going to be a funny first guy to think of is Riley Figueres. I know he is a headliner, but I don't think he gets nearly enough appreciation for his role in our defense. Part of why Billy Dwan is able to do what he does is because of Riley Figueres. Riley Figueres draws the number one matchup most of the time. And obviously there's elements of what type of offensive player is that, and in the game on Sunday, Billy obviously matched up with Matt Collison, who's an All-American caliber player and an absolute stud. But you look at some of our other games, Riley's the guy that's sort of our eraser, and it allows Billy to move up and guard a midi or be the traffic cop away from the ball, or sometimes guard the second or third dodging option, which allows Billy to play with more creativity and flow. So, Riley is certainly a headliner, but I think a guy that somehow doesn't get enough credit for his role. And I think part of that is he's just so solid. Like, he doesn't do anything spectacular. He's always where he's supposed to be. He's elite at disrupting hands with the head of his stick. And his footwork, Riley is not a world beater. He's not the most athletic player on the field, but he is one of the most efficient defensemen I've ever seen in terms of he does not waste a step when he's on the field. So he's the first guy. That's an obvious one, in my opinion. I think if you're talking unsung heroes, I think you touched on like our D midi group. We refer to our long stick midi and D midi group as the identity unit. I kind of equate them as like the fourth line checkers in hockey. And the best fourth lines in hockey, I'm an Islanders fan for years. They were given the moniker best fourth line in hockey. And part of that was they would play against the other team's best offensive groups or best offensive lines. And then they would generate some offense themselves. They wouldn't score every time, but they could counterattack you and generate some offense. So something we talk about is those guys can be the engine for the defense, but also the program if they're playing at a high level. So, obviously I think Carter Rice played a really good game. I think he's pretty underappreciated. He got off to a little bit of a slow start, and then he was clamps the rest of the day. I think Nate Levine, number 34, like we joke around, we call him the most prepared man in college lacrosse. Nate's a guy that's out there because of who he is, not necessarily what he can do, but and I mean that positively, like he's a good enough athlete. He's got a good enough stick, but his brain and his level of trust he's developed with his teammates is why he's out there and allows us to do some of the things we do defensively. He's kind of like, he's not a defenseman, but in a way he's like having an off-ball defenseman on the field with a short stick. Like he can just organize and direct traffic and is almost always in the right spot. And then I think the other two, Jake Spalina and Ryder Ochoa, they logged some good minutes. We matched them up with the second midfield line a bunch, and I thought both of them did a really nice job. That's what I would say about the whole group, that I'm excited to know those guys took a lot of heat last year nationally. I think that group across the board is all playing the best they've ever played in their careers. So I'm excited to watch them continue to do that. And then our long stick midi group, same thing. It's kind of long stick midi by committee. Nick Kakemo being a great teammate, he moved out of the close defense to play long stick midi for the first time in his career as a fifth-year senior, and has done a great job. Chuck Kaczynski is another guy who's like not a household name, but you notice him when he's out there because he's like, a dog off the leash, just running around chasing the ball. And Chuck, he plays with an intensity. And he's another guy who was a close defenseman. He missed his first 2 years with injuries. Last year he came back in the middle of the year. We tried him as a D midi. He was like, I'll try it. It was a failed experiment. We put the pole back in his hands this year, and I was like, listen, your path to the field is as a long stick midi. And he's just embraced it, and he's moving the needle for us. I just did my deep cut of our game. Chuck I do a skewer count, 5 skewers in a game. Normally would be the grill master of the week, but Billy Dwan had 9, which is a record. So, but Chuck is an unsung hero. And then a guy like Dylan Seguider too. Like he's another guy with a great head. He was on the Junkyard Dog unit last year. Just always in the right spot. He's another guy that you probably wouldn't even notice if I didn't tell you to watch him. So I would say that group as a whole, like that whole identity unit, they all kind of did their part. Each guy made an impactful play, whether it was on the stat sheet or not, too, which was pretty cool to watch.
Totally. And I mean, I didn't, maybe I missed, but you even had Jordan Beck come off the bench cold for that last man down, 2 minutes left in the game, up by 2 or 3, which had to have been a huge spot for that kid out of Baltimore, playing against the Hops, unless I'm mistaken.
He's always on the man down unit, but what looked a little different was I actually left Figueres in to play that man down, which is probably why it stood out a little bit more. Normally, Caden Cole's in that spot, but they both practice it, and I figured let Fig stay on the field. It was only a 30-second foul, so if we kill it, which we had been, I wanted our best defender on the field to finish the possession.
Totally. Turning our attention a little bit, in the post-game press conference, Coach Gate talked about changing up the halftime routine after a few slow starts in the third quarter. Can you talk a little bit about that change from your unit's perspective defensively?
Sure, like specifically what we changed?
I mean, from what I heard, it was kept our shoulder pads on, stay a little more locked in, a little bit shorter in time. But like for you defensively, that cuts down on your time to go over some tape and talk schematically and maybe make some adjustments. How did that work for you and for your guys? And I mean, obviously you only gave up 4 in the second half, so something went right.
Yeah, for sure. We had discussed as a group early in the week, our third quarters have been just like too loose, like more lack of focus than anything else. Like, I don't even think we necessarily were not executing, and I think the problems on each end of the field were different. What I would say we didn't do well defensively. I don't know if that matches up with what we felt we weren't doing well offensively. But it was more, can we keep the guys? Can we make it more streamlined? Like, rather than typically we go talk as a staff, then we go in, we give the guys like 3 minutes, then we go in. We were like, we're going straight into the locker room. We're not giving them too much time to decompress. Let's have them hear from us while they're still sort of in game mode, and then sort of break that out on the back end where, like, if there's 4 minutes on the clock, let's be done with our stuff. Typically we give them 2 or 3 minutes, then I would be like talking to the group with like a minute 30 before the second half is starting and we're rushing out there. So our goal was to be not in a rush coming out. And then Coach March and I just picked, some pretty, I don't want to use the word like laid back or mindless drills, but like things that just force you to focus on something super simple. Like, I know he was doing some basic shooting. I just did high reps. We call it speed ground balls. And it's just like getting engaged, focusing on the little white thing, picking it up, saying, we say ball, that's me when the ball's on the ground, while everyone else yells, kill it. Like, it's just volume and energy and just focusing on something that's very narrow versus, just having a catch and letting your mind wander and look around in the stands and things like that. I think that was more of our goal, was to just stay mentally engaged more than anything else. We had kicked around the idea of doing like a compete drill or a transition drill. And I was like, guys, like, honestly, like, if I was playing, I wouldn't go in the drill. Like, and that doesn't really accomplish our goal. Like, we're better off doing something that's like low impact but requires mental focus. Totally. I think it's we're ironing it out. I don't think it was like a perfect third quarter for us either. We went on a great run at the end of the quarter, and it was a slugfest. Like, it was just a grinder type of game. Kind of the game you expect when you play any Big Ten team or any 2 top teams are playing. You're constantly feeling each other out.
Totally. Yeah, intentionality is key for sure. That makes a ton of sense. And I love to hear you talking about the ground ball stuff, because I heard a clip from, I believe, Syracuse's Instagram where Utah huddle, ball goes on the ground. If it's not yours, it's not. If it's not yours, it can't be theirs. Or what's the line? You nailed it.
Yeah, I think I said it doesn't have to be yours, but it definitely can't be theirs.
Yes, yeah. Ground balls are for winners, as our friend Coach Filippo likes to say. Speaking of change, any idea why Coach Gate got away from the shirt and tie?
No, I don't. He just said new year, new Coach Gate. So, right. I think he looks a lot more comfortable. I mean, I keep floating the idea of doing the full dance team where we coordinate the staff outfits, but he likes us all to have our own individual style.
That sounds like Coach Gate, individual style. There's no, yep. I love that. Turn the attention a little bit back to your background. Obviously, playing with Cold Spring Harbor and Gettysburg, coaching at a variety of different places. Definitely wanted to call out the Colby College because I'm wearing my Bowdoin sweatshirt because of our connection to the NESCAC. But the Gettysburg connection with Coach Milliman, you touched on in the Q Sports Talk. I wasn't able to ask Coach Milliman press or post game about that, but was there any bullet banter, a wager, secret handshake at before or after the game? Anything going on with Coach Milliman with the bullet connection?
No direct comp. It was cool though. We had Justin Domingos and Tommy Pierce in the building. And Domingos, those guys played with Milliman, but both of them coached me. So Coach Pierce is now the head coach at Ithaca College. So Domingos did an upstate tour, went to Ithaca Saturday, then they both came to the game Sunday. And I was talking with somebody about this recently. I have a deep appreciation for all the Gettysburg guys, but Coach Milliman in particular, because there was a time early in my coaching career where I was an assistant coach and floating around in the abyss. I spent a summer the lone man on staff at Colby, and I had no relationship yet with Pete Milliman, and he ran into me at a recruiting event and was like, "I'll make sure you get somewhere. Like, I'll call whoever I got to call. I'll make sure that you're in a good spot." And a big reason why I was able to get that assistant job at Stevens Tech was he had worked with Coach Peluso at RIT, and he banged the phones for me a little bit. So, Pete, he did not have to do that. It was the Gettysburg ties that what created that. So I have a deep appreciation for him because, honestly, without that, I'm not sure I'd still be coaching. So I've always appreciated him for that. I think he's a great guy once you get to know him a little bit.
You might still be cutting lumber in Waterville, Maine, maybe hitting up Mama G's for the lunchtime sandwich. Speaking of those connections, looking ahead to next week, big game Tuesday against the team in a program I know you have a ton of respect for. How is this one going to be a little bit different for you?
Yeah, playing the Jaspers, the pesky Jaspers. Yeah, and obviously Coach Sage, another Gettysburg guy, leading the helm there. So I'm excited for it. It's a game that last year we played. It was one that I had scheduled when I was still the head coach at Manhattan as the season opener. So there were definitely some weird feelings there. It was the first time Manhattan had played since my year as the head coach and us losing in the playoffs. So it was tough because wanting to maintain relationships with the guys, but not being able to reach out to them and not wanting to put them in a tough spot where it's their first game of the year. I don't want them to feel like I'm reaching out and they don't want to tell me stuff. So this year I'm looking forward to it being a little bit more normal of a dynamic. I still root for a lot of the guys on the team, was involved with coaching most of them, recruiting a lot of them. So, I won't be rooting for them when the opening whistle hits, from 7 p.m. till 9:30 or 10 or however long it takes. But I sit back and watch those guys, and I'm just excited to see kind of what Coach Kelleher and I were building for so long continue to sort of roll forward. It was awesome to watch them make it to the MAC championship again last year. And I think that's a place that it's not the easiest place to win, coach, recruit. It's certainly gotten easier with an enhanced level of support, but those guys are grinding, and I know that they work their asses off. So it'll be a fun opportunity. I know when I was on the other side, the opportunity to play at a place like the Dome or some of the places we played over the years was always one we had circled no matter what. So I know they're going to play hard. That's their thing. That was always our thing. Was we can't control the talent, but we can control the effort, the enthusiasm, the connectivity, stuff like that. So I do think this is a long answer to your question. I do think they have some elements of teams that we need to learn how to beat. I think when we were at Manhattan, our style was we were going to play kind of Maryland ball control. Our goal was to beat you 8-7, not necessarily 13-12. And I think that was something that even our guys have talked about already. Like, I remember last year, like they grinded every time they were on offense. They made us play the full 80. I think there's something that can be learned from playing teams like that, regardless of if it's Manhattan or Maryland or whoever in between. I think there are things that we can point to in that game that will help us down the road too.
Speaking of anywhere in between, and I don't want to put you on the spot to look past anyone, but Colgate right after that, you go Tuesday, Saturday, Manhattan, Colgate. Any initial thoughts on the pace of play that the Raiders are coming to town with? Obviously, the upstate New York connection, and they're putting up goals at a clip unlike anybody else really in the country. Has there been any intentionality in practice leading up to to that week as far as being prepared for that type of style while you sort of maybe hide it? We're not talking Colgate. We're just talking about a team that plays faster type deal.
No, not yet. I mean, it's probably a little early. We are fast math here, like 11 days away from playing them. I think we're on spring break right now, so I do think there will be some hidden prep for both games. Even in the beginning of the week when we're talking about we want to be the best versions of us. But there'll be elements of preparing for both Manhattan and Colgate at the same time. I just think you have to do that when you have a Tuesday, Saturday. You can't play Manhattan and be like, not think about Colgate at all as a coach, and then roll into Wednesday and be like, here, we're going to completely do all these things we haven't talked about yet. I think these are opportunities to almost, you put it in their brains, you focus on yourself, then you focus on Manhattan. And then the day after you play Manhattan, you go, okay, remember when we did these drills last Thursday? Like, this is why we were doing this. It was getting ready for Colgate. So, we've challenged our guys to narrow their focus and not look ahead. So I would say we're doing the same thing as a staff. Like any preconceived ideas I have about Colgate would be based on playing them last year, watching them last year. And I'm a lacrosse fan. So like Saturday night or after we play our game, I'll look at the scoreboard and be like, what were the most exciting games? And I'll watch the fourth quarter of all of them, like before I go to bed, just to watch, and just see what people are doing and be a junkie and learn. And there's so many great coaches and just see what they do at the end of games and things like that. So I've seen a couple of Colgate's games through that. But at the same time, I just know that what I love about Colgate is, and this is the identity piece, they know what they want to be. They know exactly who they're trying to be. They play the same every time. Doesn't matter who you are. And I think that's why they are able to punch. I don't want to say punch above their weight, because I think they're really talented, but like why they're able to beat teams that on paper, people on the outside would say they shouldn't beat. I think that's why they're able to do that, because of their confidence, and they don't back down from anybody. So, based on last year, I would assume it's going to be high flying, super high paced. I may be full gray hair by the end. A 10-man ride, the transition, their O guys are super slick. Colin Monroe does a great job of teaching guys how to play sort of in the gray. They create goals out of thin air. So they play a super exciting brand of lacrosse that I love to watch, except for when I'm coaching against them. Totally. So I have so much respect for them. I think they're going to be they're, in my opinion, a top 15 team, top 10 team for sure.
I know as a defensive coordinator, it's hard to hear, but Vegas might set that over under at like 39.5 or something.
I don't like that, but I get it.
Oh man. No, I appreciate you sharing all that. The one thing that just came to my mind that I thought was interesting, Coach Domingos and coming up and doing the upstate spin. If I remember correctly, Coach Pierce couldn't get it done on Saturday against the Nazareth Golden Flyers, but you were able to get it done. So maybe you got one up on Coach Pierce for once.
No, I think they got it done. I think they played the Scranton.
Oh, they played the Scranton. Okay.
The Scranton. I'm blanking on the mascot. They're not the Royals, are they?
Yeah, the Scranton Royals.
Yeah, the Scranton Royals.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they beat the Scranton Royals. So I think it was a sweep for the Domingos Upstate Tour. I mean, depending on, I don't know, he may have been wearing his like half Hopkins, half Cuse undershirt. So I don't know, but it sounded like it was a good weekend overall.
Love that. All right, well, taking up a ton of your time here, I appreciate it. I want to wrap up with a quick game. We haven't talked about this, something I came up with that hopefully we can have a little bit of fun with. We're calling it This or That. I'm going to give you two items, and you got to choose this or that. kind of runs the gamut, all right?
Okay.
So this or that. Chicken cutlet, any way that you want to fancy it up, or an SEC on an everything, SPK.
You're SE sausage, egg, and cheese in me. That's what you're giving me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go chicken cutlet. My wife, she's making them tonight as part of a feel good Tuesday. So chicken cutlet for sure. And the breakfast sandwich order obviously is a Long Island staple. For me, I'm a little unique. Bacon, egg, and cheese, but Swiss cheese, and then hot sauce, not salt, pepper, ketchup for me.
All right. We're gonna tuck into some other food stuff later on, but this or that, V-hold or cross-check hold at the island?
Oof, you're gonna make me choose one?
Yeah.
If you're gonna make me choose one, I'll say V-hold, stick up the field. I think there's some nuance to that to the discussion, but if I have to choose one, I'll say V hold, stick up field.
It's the only way to tie up Joey Spallina as he tries to post up there at the corner.
Yep.
This or that, and this one, this or that. Forced shot clock violation or shot blocked off a skewer to ground ball clear.
Oh, give me a shot blocked skewer all day to the kill off the carpet. Yeah, for sure.
All right. I love the shot clock violation. It gives so much juice, but
fires me up for sure. Fires me up. But listen, I mean, soaking shots. Yeah, that was one of my least favorite pastimes as a defenseman. So I appreciate anybody putting their body on the line. And as long as you gave him the ground ball, that was going to get the win for me.
Hell yeah. All right. This or that. Q's football home game or Q's hoops home game?
Oof. That's a tough one. I would say, based on my 2 years, probably would lean football only because the capacity, and especially this year with the new seats, it was a little bit smaller, but Coach Brown pumped some life into the football program coming from Georgia. And the first month, I think I went to every game, and every game was like 44,000 people. So, when the dome is 44, like they call it the loud house, it's uncomfortable in there. It's so loud. Whereas basketball, just with the court and they shrink it down, you're looking at like 18 to 20,000, which is still awesome. But it hits a little bit differently than the full thing for a football game.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give a tip of the cap, nothing near post tip of the cap to the operations team at the JMA Wireless Dome. I think this past weekend alone, right? Women's lacrosse Friday night, flip it to men's hoops Saturday at 8 p.m., and then flip it back for a men's lacrosse game Sunday at 2.
Yeah. Those guys, they earn their paychecks this weekend.
No doubt. And it was a Q sweep. Women 3-0 baby in the dome. We love that.
Yeah.
All right. Little upstate food here. This or that, chicken riggies or tomato pie?
I would say in my short time, I'll go with tomato pie.
Nice.
I'm a pizza enthusiast, so it's been fun experimenting with some different things for sure.
That's a perfect segue. This or that, original Italian pizzeria or Varsity?
I'll probably go with. It's a tough question because if I'm getting pizza, I'm going to OIP. But we go to Varsity a lot as a staff, but normally to enjoy the deli counter. So it's a loaded answer. I would say if I'm getting pizza, OIP. If I'm not getting pizza, it'd be Varsity.
All right. This or that. I got two more for you. Next one. This is another sort of topical Marshall Street. Orange Crate or Fagan's?
Happy to say I've never been to either.
Okay.
I mean, listen, based on what I hear, I would say Orange Crate, but I've never been to either.
Yeah, as like a good journalist does, I had to check out the pregame scene down on Marshall Street. So we had a couple LBLs brewed with Canadian kindness at Orange Crate, and it was a good pregame spot for sure.
We last spring I had a group of buddies that I went to high school with. 8 of them came up for our game versus Virginia, and they're going to come up again this spring for our UNC game. It sounds like, and I based my answer off of their experience. They also checked out Orange Crate pregame. I got some good stories after. So they didn't go to Fagan's, so nothing to report yet. But maybe I'll get them there this April, and we can compare notes.
Amen. So this or that for a reason. All right, the last one. I think this one's going to be a slam dunk for you. This or that, fist bump or high five?
I mean, let's go high five. High five.
High five. I said from the beginning, man. Number 2 at least number 1 or number 2 in the country in high fives every year, Coach Odierna, for sure.
Yeah, before every game, I make sure I get a touch on everybody in the handshake line. Usually like a dap. But, it's probably more of a high five than fist bump guy for sure. But I'm not afraid of either. There's a great article, I'm sure you've seen it, the Steve Nash article about getting touches with your teammates and how that directly correlates to winning. I shared that with the guys last year. So, fist bumps and high fives have become infectious around the Syracuse Lacrosse program.
Hey, man, high fives are free. Hand them out.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Coach Odierna, I appreciate the time here on the Nothing Near Post show. Best of luck. Enjoy the week of prep because it's an open weekend, and best of luck next week with the Jaspers coming to town and then the Raiders after that. But yeah, again, just really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you having me. First guest ever. They're going to talk about this episode when you hit Pardon My Take levels on viewership. So, hopefully you'll bring me back at some point.
Well, and hopefully I can come back as some press and maybe have an interview in person down the line, maybe deep into May. But we're focused on one thing at a time. I know our focus is more intentional these days.
Exactly right. Would be great.
Thanks so much, Coach Odierna. Talk soon.
See ya.